Hey Internet, welcome to Worldview Everlasting, your favorite YouTube addiction.
This episode of Worldview Everlasting is brought to you by the letter Awesome, the numbers Sweet Action, and Issues Etc. Talk radio for the thinking Christian. IssuesETC.org.
And on this week's Greek Tuesday, Lent 2, Mark chapter 8, verses 27 to 38. A linchpin and hinge point in the Gospel of Mark, the time when Jesus finally starts to say what he's really here to do. You don't want to miss it. Stick around. Alright, so Mark's Gospel is notoriously difficult to structure. It doesn't seem to work on the same level that the Western mind of structuring wants it to. But you can pinpoint these various areas where there is something going on. It's just pinning it down to the point where you're like, this is the structure and no one can argue about it. It doesn't really happen. But what does happen is that at the start of the gospel, there's this so-called messianic secret. This whole thing where Jesus is like, don't tell people who I am. Don't tell people what I'm doing.
All I'm saying.
Everybody stay quiet about this.
They're going to get
Right? And anyone who's read Mark or heard Mark preach kind of knows about this. But this thing begins to go away later in the gospel. And it happens right about this time. And this time, Mark chapter 8, it's the beginning of a section that seems to be bookended by, well, two very similar stories. In the early part of Mark 8, you have the healing of a blind man that doesn't quite go so well. It goes well in the end, but it takes some stages. Jesus uses some spit and rubs it on his eyes, and the guy can't see very well, but he can see. He's like, hey, look, there's a bunch of trees. And they're like, no, those are people. And so Jesus does a little more, and boom, he's healed. He can see. Great. Yay, everyone's amazed. But like, what? Like, perfect Son of God, Holy One of all glory. He has done all things well. He has authority to cast out demons, and yet he kind of like messed up? Is that what's going on? Or is there a teaching moment going on here, right? Because a little bit later, he's going to find a blind man by the side of the road crying out, Son of David, have mercy on me. He's going to be like, yep, go ahead. You can see. Bam, the guy can see. So there's this like half see but full see thing going on in this big gospel in which nobody sees who Jesus really is. Nobody really gets who he is. And right at this moment, he's about to start saying to them, look, here's who I really am. And his own disciples, the one he's been carrying with him the entire time, teaching them personally about the truth of God's word, are going to be like, no, you can't be that. And he's going to turn back on them and censure them and rebuke them and say,
let me tell you a little story about a man named
You guys aren't allowed to talk about who the Christ is until you understand who the Christ is.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Right, and this is sort of like where the messianic secret, I think, is headed, which is that he doesn't want people preaching the wrong gospel. He wants them to understand what the gospel really is, and in today's text, he's going to leave no question about what that fact of history means. Right, so let's dig into that. Jesus is going on his way to the villages of Caesarea Philippi, and he asks his disciples a question on the road. As an aside, let's remember that the disciples in Mark's gospel, generally speaking, are going to be the 12. This is not a reference to anybody who just kind of likes or follows Jesus. Those are his followers or even the crowds. He's going to gather them about in just a moment, but he's talking really to his 12, his chosen preachers who are going to be the ones who are supposed to talk about him in the world eventually. He turns to them and he says, who do men say that I am? Now, of course, you're going to notice in your ESV, it doesn't say men, it says people, because we in the American latter days are so afraid of gender, actual diversity, that we can't bear to have differences in language, even if it doesn't really exclude anybody. And so we try to include everybody even when they're not excluded. And so we end up destroying and dismantling our language and losing some of the beauty of it. But
Get on with it.
Yes, get on with it!
the Greek word there is pretty clear. Who do men say that I am? And by this he means everybody, right? Because man and woman are actually one. We become one flesh. We make kids, all this stuff. It's all very there in Christian doctrine. And you don't need to go like have me tell you about it, right? This is actually kind of obvious. Anyway, the real question is, who are yapping mouths of men and women and children saying that I, this man preaching, is? And they respond to him, well, John the Baptist is what some people are saying, but other people are saying Elijah, because, the prophet said Elijah would come again. And the other people people are just saying, well, one of the prophets, one of the old prophets, one of the new prophets, a prophet. Nobody really knows, Jesus. What do you say? So Jesus then asks them, okay, fine. All these other people are saying this. Well, who do you, plural, the you there is plural, it's important. Who do you 12 say that I am? Who do you think I am? Why are you following me? And Peter wastes no time in doing the right thing. You are the Christos, the Christ, the anointed one, the Messiah, the son of David, who will sit on David's throne and rule over Israel, the nation for whom God fights for the sake of mankind forever and ever. Awesomeness, awesomeness, amen. And then we have kind of a little moment where you can decide how to read the text. Verse 30 follows this with and, which can also be translated as but he, Jesus, strictly charged them. It can mean rebuked. It can mean, which he probably is not rebuking Peter. It can mean censured, like said, be quiet to them. He strictly charged them to medene legosin, to say to no one or nothing. And that's the challenge. He challenged them in order that nothing they would say, or in order that to no one they would say anything concerning him. Now, is he really saying tell no one about me right now, or is he really saying don't say anything about me right now because you don't know what it means to be the Christ? And everything that follows would lead me to think that he's actually saying he strictly charged them, he censured them. Peter says, you're the Christ, and we're going to tell everybody about this. And he says, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Just know I have a whole bag of shh with your name on it.
You don't know what you're talking about. Let me tell you what you're talking about. Say nothing to no one until you understand what this means.
I don't think it means what you think it means.
And why would I say that's what Jesus is getting at? Because that's the next thing he does. He immediately starts to tell them what it means. He began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and must be rejected by three groups of people. Very interesting here. The elders and the high priests and the scribes. Really kind of summarizing everybody who's anybody in Judaism. The elders would be the Pharisaical movement within the synagogues. The high priests would be the temple control, kind of the liberals of the day, really very wealthy, but not like in Jesus so much. And the scribes would be your lawyers, your theologians, your scholastics, the guys who studied the Bible for a living. He said that the Son of Man's got to suffer many things by being in the midst of being rejected by all of these groups and then be murdered by them, be killed by them, but after 3 days to anastasis, to rise, to be resurrected from the dead. And he said these things plainly, it says. Like he didn't say this in parables. He didn't hide what he was saying. For the first time he said, okay, say I'm the Christ. Don't tell anybody what that means until you get this right. This is what it means to be the Christ. He's got to die. He's got to rise. No one's going to like him. He's going to suffer. You're all going to think it's over, but then this is what God's been planning forever. Well, not forever. Yes, forever, but especially since the fall. But Peter immediately did the wrong thing and took him aside to censure him. Same word. Jesus censured them. Tell no one anything until you understand this. Peter's like,
But
Jesus, don't tell anyone this at all. But Jesus turns and looks at all of his disciples. It seems that Peter kind of took him aside to censure him, but Jesus is like, look, hey, everybody listen to this right now. This is important. He's wrong. Yeah? Get behind me, Satan. You do not have in mind the things of God. Now, the word there is very literally about having something in mind, having a clear thought or a clear perception. But in the motif of everything that's going on, it's really like you don't see the things of God. You guys is blind. Even after I told you plainly, you're still blind.
We can see all obstacles in our way.
You're going to be blind all the way through until I get it done. And the way Mark's gospel ends, you're still blind at the end. Now, we all know from the other gospels and the rest of the Bible, they don't stay blind. But the point here is that without the death and resurrection of Jesus, you cannot see anything. You are, in fact, in league with Satan and have only in mind the things of this age, the things of men, which are about to be condemned even more vehemently as he calls the crowds to himself. So, hey, disciples, I just yelled at y'all. Crowd, come listen to this. I got to tell y'all this. These guys are so dumb.
You are really dumb.
I want everyone to hear what I'm about to say so no one gets it wrong. Right now, he's probably not being that mean, but that's kind of what's going on too. He's almost embarrassing them, and he's going to be talking about embarrassment, which makes it even more clear. He says, if anybody would come after me, follow me, be behind me is like literally what it means. If anyone's going to walk in my wake or receive any benefit from me, here is the result. Here is what must be true. He must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. All perfectly acceptable ways to translate it, although in English, I think we kind of maybe hear it wrong. Because denying yourself doesn't mean like serving your neighbor. It means to reject who you presently are. This is about justification. This is about seeing that I cannot, by my own self, achieve union with God or make myself good in His sight. If you want to benefit from Jesus, then you must actually reject your own attempts to be good and instead take up my cross. Well, what does this mean? Like, suffer a little bit? Like, I'm just gonna like suffer? Have you ever seen someone on a cross? They're not just suffering a little bit, right? If you take up a cross, where you're going to die. You're going to be crucified. So if anyone wants to benefit from Jesus, if anyone wants to benefit from me, he says, you must reject who you are and be crucified. But that's not very fun. Exactly. See, he's speaking plainly now. And he goes on, because whoever would save his life, and we should imply here himself, whoever thinks it's up to him to create his own salvation, he will destroy his life. And that word there, lose, it's destroy. He will ruin everything. Whoever thinks that by some means of his own will or desire, he will create salvation, will in the end shipwreck the very thing he wants the most. But whoever loses his life, it says, for my sake. Now, okay, the for my sake is a very literal translation there. It's like for the sake of, but again, we're going to hear this with our legalistic ears and it's going to be like, well, I see Jesus, and so for Jesus' sake, I'm going to go do something. That's not what Jesus is saying. Whoever destroys his life in me and in my gospel, whoever, because of what happens on that cross and on that third day with that resurrection, admits they got nothing to bring to God, their life is saved. In fact, they will save it. And you can even say that as long as you don't like twist it back to some self-justifying proposition again. Whoever thinks to justify himself will destroy himself, but whoever is atoned for by me in the cross will live forever. And seriously then, what does it profit a man, a person, you, to gain everything in this life, to earn everything in this life, to succeed at everything you ever do, but lose your soul, lose your life, burn in hell? What could you possibly gain or earn in this life that you will use to atone for yourself on the last day? And this is just it. What are you going to give in exchange for yourself? What can you buy yourself back from hell with? Nothing is the implied answer. And so get this, you cannot reject what the Christ has come to do and hope to live forever. Jesus says, whoever is ashamed, embarrassed by me, right here, what I've got to do, and my words about that, I will be embarrassed of him on the last day when the Son of Man comes with all the glory of the Father and his angels. Without who Jesus is and what Jesus has done, no one can by no means be saved from the result, the right and just result of who we are as sinful, broken, wicked, selfish creatures. But this is just it. Here's the good news. Like, why is he so angry? Because they're rejecting the good news, right? And he's like trying to beat them over the head with this. He's going to do this 3 times before that final blind man is healed. And the emphasis of these bookends is, look, there's something between this that takes you from not really understanding who Jesus is to fully understanding who Jesus is. And it's all about this cross and the resulting empty tomb earned by the payment of the blood price he gave to the Father for your sake on that day. Lent is about remembering this, right? Beating our breast and saying, if it's up to me to save myself, I will destroy myself. But thanks be to God, I'm praying for his mercy and I already know it's given. Where? Clearly in the body of Jesus. By the way, take and eat. This is for you. All right, thanks for tuning in to Worldview Everlasting. If you like what we do here, getting the gospel out into the interwebs, promoting quality devotional materials like the Around the World Journal, answering your questions on worldvieweverlasting.com, then make sure you support us. Join the Lutheran Ninja Clan. $5 a month goes a long way. And if this video is going to help someone you know, not make them angry, but help someone you know, if they need a little gospel today, feel free to post it on their wall on Facebook or tweet it under your handle. Yeah. Until next time, thanks for tuning in. Rock on.
So dumb, so dumb, so dumb, so